Twice impeached and criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald Trump is seizing control of Washington, D.C.'s police force and deploying 800 National Guard troops, declaring it Liberation Day and vowing to take our Capitol back. Trump used an emergency power in the D.C. Home Rule Act to temporarily put local police under federal command, saying the city's facing a public safety crisis. That's despite crime hitting a 30-year low last year.
And we're here for a very serious purpose, Something's out of control, but we're going to put it in control very quickly like we did on the southern border. I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly. And you people are victims of it, too. You know, you're reporters, and I understand a lot of you tend to be on the liberal side, but you don't want to get mugged and raped and shot and killed. And you all know people and friends of yours that happened. And so you can be anything you want, but you want to have safety in the streets. You want to be able to leave your apartment or your house where you live and feel safe and go into a store to buy a newspaper or buy something. And you don't have that now. The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about as being the worst places on earth, much higher. This is much higher. The number of car thefts has doubled over the past 5 years, and the number of carjackings has more than tripled. Murders in 2023 reached the highest rate probably ever. They say 25 years, but they don't know what that means because it just goes back 25 years. Can't be worse. Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged-out maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it.
Meanwhile, the D.C. Police Union, representing over 3,000 officers, has voiced support for the administration's actions despite recent declines in crime. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser called Trump's move unsettling and unprecedented, stating, given some of the past rhetoric, we are not totally surprised.
We know, however, as most have heard from the president's press conference, that he has prerogatives in D.C. unlike anywhere else in the country, including his authority given by our home rule charter to require the mayor, to require me to supply services of the Metropolitan Police Department. And he also has control and the ability to deploy the National Guard. But let me be clear, as our home rule charter is also clear, and the president's executive order restates. Chief Pamela Smith is the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, and its 3,100 members work under her direction. The Home Rule Charter requires the mayor to provide the services of MPD during special conditions of an emergency, and we will follow the law. Though there's a question about the subjectivity of that declaration. In fact, the chief has already provided a high-level liaison and point of contact with the federal government and made those initial contacts. The executive order is also clear that the president has delegated his authority to make requests of us to Attorney General Pam Bondi. I have reached out to Attorney General Bondi and hope to schedule a meeting soon.
Joining us now to discuss this escalation is Marcus Batchelor from People for the American Way. Marcus, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. What is your initial take to what has transpired today in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I'm outraged by it. I think, and all of America should be outraged by it. What we saw is the president rant and rave and use the authority, test the authority of his power to take control over a city where over 90% of the people didn't vote for him or his values 3 times in a row. I think it is DC now, but everyone should be concerned that it will be their communities tomorrow. This president has demonstrated both in a hyper-local sense here in DC, but also nationally that he's willing to test the limits of his authority to demonstrate and to just make a point. But when he takes authority over a local police department, that puts people's real lives in line. And what we've seen is that the president has always made people in the District of Columbia less safe, whether you think about him sicking troops on peaceful protesters in 2020, whether you think about him sicking a mob on the United States Capitol in our neighborhoods in 2021, when you think about him pardoning all those people convicted under local and federal law for those crimes when he re-entered the White House earlier this year, Donald Trump has only made people in DC less safe, and all residents in DC are very concerned about this order today.
Now, Marcus, you talked about all residents. When I look at this order, when I look at what he's talking about, and when I hear the language, it doesn't seem like this is something that he's interested in for all D.C. residents. He talks about tourists who are coming in. He's talking about people who work in the White House and the federal government, where the rest of us, I lived in Southeast for 15 years, where the rest of us, many of us who are black, it seems like we're the ones that they're trying to protect us from, but it doesn't seem like there's real support or care for the rest of the citizens of D.C. How do you see that?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think you caught the red flag in this whole press conference that he is so embarrassed about these crime rates that he's pulling out of thin air or from years and years ago in terms of DC's crime spike. He's, weaving all of these hyperbolic narratives about how he has to get it under control as a symbol for the nation. But again, he is projecting because unfortunately he has to see the manifestation of all his lack of investment, of all his lack of work on things like public safety, on things like housing, on things like crime, the things that bother him on his drive to his golf course, but don't bother him enough to do anything about. So what he wants to do is lock up the people that he says are a problem for his eyesight. What he wants to do is displace the unhoused people who are disturbing his view on his way to his golf course instead of solving those problems, but that has real material impact for the people here in the District of Columbia.
Well, Marcus, when you talk about the homeless part and kind of weaving into what you were just talking about, he says that the homeless people, the unhoused people need to leave D.C. Last time I checked, if you're unhoused, you don't have a place to go. When you talk about the work that you're doing with People for the American Way, you're having conversations about what needs to be happening for the unhoused people, as well as the services that need to be applied to young people within the city so that they are not involved in crime in the first place, which doesn't seem to be something that Trump has cared about. Am I correct?
Absolutely not. But if we think that Trump actually cares about public safety in any sense, but especially public safety in the District of Columbia, I think we're just feeding into that lie. Donald Trump could care less about public safety in the District of Columbia. This is exclusively about power. This is demonstrating to his base, to the rest of the country, that he's willing to again test the limits of his power. And it's also a test for us. It's a test on local autonomy, right? The mayor is right, an unprecedented attack on local home rule in the District of Columbia. And it's a test of his limits and how he can replicate this across the country. The District of Columbia wasn't the only city he mentioned in today's press conference. When the press asked him if he's willing to do more, he said, yeah, Chicago and Oakland and Baltimore. I think we should all point out that all of those cities are also led by Black mayors as well. So this is a power grab on Black power across the country, and this should be a warning sign. And this is an opening salvo in what I think is going to be a national campaign.
Before I bring in the panel, one other thing I want to talk about, just I'm really paying attention, as I mentioned, to the language. I hear him say people being mugged, raped, shot, and killed, people living in bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor. He talked about armed gangs running through the city. It almost made it sound like it was like, Mogadishu, back in the 80s or something to that effect. And when I was listening to another commentator earlier today, they were talking about how the language he was using is reminiscent of when he was talking about the Central Park Five. And it seems like he's just bringing that rhetoric back up to try to foment more anger from people to justify what he's doing today.
Yeah, I mean, it's old racist rhetoric. Trump might be a new character in this long line of history, but he's using very old rhetoric. He knows how to dehumanize Black people. He knows how to dehumanize poor people and unhoused people so that he can, or immigrants, so that he can do what he wants. And he knows how to typecast certain types of people and certain types of leaders, which is why you also see him only call Black leaders in Congress and in big cities low IQ. He knows what that means, right? How that signals to people about Black people, and I think that we should be very concerned about that. And in a plurality Black city where he doesn't just have a little bit of fame and the ability to buy a newspaper, right, in the sense of the Central Park Five, he is now the president of the United States with over 12 federal agencies at his disposal, the DC National Guard and the military beyond that. What can he do, right? He destroyed 5 lives with a little bit of fame in a newspaper. What can he do to hundreds of thousands of Black lives as president of the United States?
I want to bring in my panel. I have Kelly Bethia, JD Communications Strategist out of Washington, D.C., as well as Joy Cheney, founder of JOI Strategies, also out of Washington, D.C. So we're all living in here right about now. Kelly, your question for Marcus.
Ooh, a question. I had a comment. But I guess considering that we are in a Black space right now, being the 4 of us and most of us who are watching this programming, considering that we did all that we could do, right? We voted, we campaigned, we've marched, we've protested, we've boycotted, we've screamed, we've silenced, we have done all we can do. What else, right? What more can we do? Because frankly, I'm still in this resting period, right? Because when you have exhausted all that you can do, what else is there for us who are in the same boat?
Yeah, well, we've got to build the biggest boat possible and get as many people in it so that we can take turns rowing. I think the president's strategy in this second term, and they've been, really plain about it, is to flood the zone, to flood you with as much controversy, with as many problems as possible, so that we do feel overwhelmed by it. But I think what today's announcement shows is that we have to remain vigilant, that we have to remain active in these fights, because who runs our local police department? We never thought, right, in a million years that we would have to fight the president of the United States for control over public safety. And again, that's DC's fight today, but he is on a rampage. And so we've got to make sure as many people as possible can fight, that we take our breaks when we need to. But Donald Trump is clearly counting on our silence, is counting on us getting tired enough to be complicit. And we see some of our leaders in DC doing that, saying, all right, well, we're just gonna, figure it out. No, this is an affront to democracy. This is a threat to public safety, and we've got to treat it like that. And as many people as possible have to get in that fight.
Joy, your question.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm not even going to pretend with the question here because I know we're going to engage you in a conversation. Here's the deal. If you are a funder out there, this is the time. We need you to get off your ass, whatever has been happening, your planning meetings, your long time thinking. It's time to get boots on the ground, money on the ground, and in the hands of the people who can use it, nonprofit organizations who are struggling right now. We need that. We need you to fund People for the American Way and others as well. I'm just going to start there because I think that's a conversation that needs to be had if we want to really fight back. We also have to make sure lawyers are tooled in this moment. If you are a lawyer, you're at a law firm, you ought to be beating down the door of the District of Columbia, trying to say, what can we do to be a part of the effort to defend this city against what will be encroachments on home rule? To be clear, please, this is the question. Can you just remind everyone what the home rule laws say about how long Donald Trump has for this emergency designation, because it's not indefinite. And I think what the mayor was saying today was we're going to hold him to it.
That's right. So, yeah, Section 470 of the Home Rule Act, which gave 50 years ago the residents of the District of Columbia local home rule, says that the president on a temporary basis can federalize the Metropolitan and Police Department if the president declares an emergency. Now, the president has cobbled together some excuse for what he deems as an emergency, and to your point, has exercised that very temporary authority. He had 48 hours to notify congressional leadership that he was doing it, which I think he said he was done today. And then he only has a 30-day window for that emergency to be enacted before he needs further permission from Congress. So this is temporary.
Right.
Obviously, there's a lot of damage you can do in 30 days. But to your point, there's a second stage of this fight, and we need to make sure that we're urging members of Congress to come back to Washington ready to hold a check on the president so that he doesn't extend this power indefinitely and doesn't inflict further damage on the residents of the district.
Now, Kelly, I know when I came to you and asked what your question was for Marcus, but you also stated that you had a comment, so I wanted to make sure you got that comment in before we went to our break. Please, let us know what's on your mind.
The comment is that this is all bullshit. That's the comment. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I hate saying it so succinctly, but it really is, because I go back to just the previous administration being Biden, when, if I recall correctly, his granddaughter got robbed in DC. And he had, if he was going to, exercise full nepotism, had every right to declare an emergency for his grandbaby and bring in the National Guard and track down the monster that hurt his baby. Did not do it. Right? Did not do it. Mm-hmm. It's the conflation of bullshit that this administration has to do in order for it to do what it wants to do. It is extremely frustrating, and frankly, all of this could have been avoided if you had voted for the black lady.
Marcus, I'm coming back to this phony numbers investigation because I'm thinking about Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it seems like his mindset of don't bring me no bad news. If it's something that he doesn't like, he's going to make up numbers to justify what he wants to do. And it seems like working to occupy D.C. after he tried it in Los Angeles is the latest example of this.
Absolutely. And the president has a long history of coming after DC. Again, since his first term, he is, repeated rhetoric that the federal government should take over DC. He said it on the campaign trail last year, and we should, again, take his word for what he says he wants to do. He will find whatever workaround he can, again, just to prove his point. And now he's found this opportunity, obviously, to also distract the rest of the country from the looming Epstein scandal that he's going through. But, it also is a good opportunity for him to, quote unquote, flex his muscle. And yeah, if he can do it standing on top of some fake numbers about how Washington, D.C. is the worst city on the planet, he's willing to lie and obfuscate to do that. But to your point, the numbers don't lie. We are not a perfect city, but local leadership has worked very hard, and local leaders on the ground have worked very hard to wrap our arms around folks struggling in our community, to get them in housing, to get folks off the streets, to put young people into productive programming. And I think he's only disrupting the work that we've been doing over the last several years.
And Joy, I want to come back to you. I know you had a comment to make, but I also want you to speak on the optics of the fact of them turning over so much of this authority to Pam Bondi and taking away the responsibilities and authority of the Black women leadership here in Washington, D.C. I want to get your thoughts on that in addition to what you were about to speak on earlier.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Let's be clear. The mayor has been clear. They have not taken away her authority. They've layered her, to be sure. But the Metropolitan Police Department is still in charge of the police here. The reason these things are so important is that we have to continue to follow the law. There are certain things DC is required to comply with. There are other things that they are not required to comply with. We don't want to give Trump more credit, more power than he's already taking. So it's really important to hold that, because if he violates it, she will have some rights to sue. So we want to make sure we're keeping the line straight. And of course, the attorney for the District of Columbia is already looking at this. So I just think that when you see her muted response, it's because she's saying, I'm going to follow the law and you better follow the law too. Her chief is still in control of their department. What the federal government is doing is different, and they'll have to partner together. I think that's just important, a small tweak. The other thing is that, we have to continue to rely on the numbers. The fact of the matter is crime is down in DC, but that does not mean it's perfect. It is not perfect anywhere. What this is Donald Trump trying to make a play so that he can take over not just DC, but other cities as well. Obviously, it's easier here in DC because it's not a state, which I thought the mayor was very right in saying, if you are a Democrat in Congress who believes that DC, who's grieving what's happening to DC right now, you have no one to blame but yourself. Because when you had an opportunity to prioritize DC statehood, you did not do it. One thing we can say for Donald Trump, he uses every opportunity at his disposal. He has always wanted to take over DC. He's using a moment where he needs a distraction to do it. That's what this is, about.
Right.
We don't always use the moments when we have them. That's the real problem here. But I will wrap up just to say that with respect to this, we're going to have to be mindful of him as soon as that 30-day mark is. We have to make sure he's going to Congress. If he doesn't do it, the longer he does it, the more it invalidates the notion that there is an emergency. We have to continue to ask, what is he looking for? The mayor said that today. What is the president looking for in order to declare that this is no longer an emergency? We know it's BS, but we have to play it a little longer. And while we are waiting, if there are additional federal resources that we can use to make DC safe for the people who live here, use it. Use
Absolutely.
the moment. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes, Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I for sure think that there is some practical application on the ground for cooler heads for some of the leaders in our city who have to manage this relationship. I don't think that should be an instruction for any Democrats around the country, right? We don't need to watch them play this out. We need them to stand up for us right now. You're absolutely right. Democrats missed an opportunity to protect the residents of the District of Columbia from this onslaught by not granting them statehood. But we have to know that every day, every hour, that President Trump and his cronies have this increased authority over the lives and freedom of Black people in the District of Columbia is a day and hour of danger that we must keep preventing. So we have to pour into our communities, but national Democrats need to stand up right now, right, and become the alternative, present democracy for the District of Columbia. It's going to be an uphill battle, and we've got iterations to this fight, but God damn it, somebody needs to stand up right now and say that this is not about public safety. It is a power play, and we need to resist that power play that Trump is having on an all-Black city, because it will be somebody else's Black city next.
And finally, to you, Kelly, You know, when we saw some of these ICE raids and people said, oh, you know, Latinos didn't care, many of them voted for Trump, and now they're finding out and so on and so forth, many of us here at the Black Star Network were saying, be careful, because once they start coming for one group, they're coming for everybody. What I'm noticing, Kelly, is that some of the people who are also going to be on these streets patrolling, in addition to the National Guard, are also going to be ICE agents. And so if you Black, it seems like they could be, if they take you off those streets, or if they take somebody who's unhoused off those streets, you're not necessarily going to the DC jail. You might end up being deported to Rwanda or some of these other places. Can you talk a little bit about the moment that we're all about to find out how much this is problematic for all of us and not just one particular community?
Sure. I mean, I want to push back on that sentiment a little bit, in that just because we said this particular group is going to find out is not to say that we didn't know that we were also going to find out.
But I think some of us didn't think that we were going to find out. But I agree that many of us didn't feel that way. But for some of them are like, oh, we didn't know this was going to be us too. But go ahead.
Oh, see, it was an us issue from jump for me. Like, there was no separation. I was upset with the Latino community who voted for Trump because they thought they were othered from us.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Like, we are all minorities to racist white people. They truly don't see color. They just see black and white, which ironically are neutrals. They're not technically colored, right? But I digress. But when it comes to this situation and how we're about to find out in this situation, frankly, it is just disheartening. Now, especially in DC, voted against this, right? Like, if you look at the numbers of how the votes broke down in DC and the surrounding DMV area, we did not choose this. So this is truly oppressive for those of us who live here. I live in DC proper, and I am from DC proper. I did not vote for this. I did not choose this. My family did not vote for this. My family did not choose this. And still going to find out. And that is what's heartbreaking about this. The fact that we are merely just pawns at 34-time convicted felon. It is ridiculous.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. We're going to get some of the audio fixed as we get prepared to go to this break. But I wanted to thank you, Marcus Batchelor, for joining us. And please keep us posted on what your organization is doing so that we can continue to amplify it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.